Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Gaëtan Verna. I'm the director of the Power Plant, and let me be the first to welcome you to our 2014 Power Talks in the context of the Toronto International Art Fair. So for 9 years running, Art Toronto has commissioned the Power Plant to co-present Power Talks, a program featuring influential people from the world of art who speak in the context of the fair. This year, the gallery is very, very pleased to present Bisi Silva, tonight's featured speaker, who will speak on the topic of Curating Africa, the Shifting Curatorial Paradigm. Bisi and I've known each other for many years. For the last, I would say, 3 to 4 Venice Biennale, Bisi Silva, Dominique Fontaine, and myself, we roam the streets of Venice together. And since then, I kept saying, we need to bring you to Montreal, because I was in Montreal. And then when I moved here, I go, well, I guess we'll bring you to Toronto. So I'm so pleased to have you with us, Bisi, so that everybody can hear about your great work. And it's really an honor for me to be here to welcome you. So there are many people that have helped to make Power Talk successful, ongoing program. First, the Power Plant would like to thank our partners at Art Toronto, Linnell Ribbenchuk and Susanna Rosenstock. Thank you so much for your help and for your openness for all of the crazy programs that we throw at you for our Power Talks. It really makes this, this programming really tied in to what we do at the Power Plant. And the gallery is also indebted to our government funders, the Canada Council for the Arts, the Ontario Arts Council, and the Toronto Arts Council. As always, I have to thank our partners at Harbourfront Centre, and pleased to know that all public programs at the Power Plant are generously supported by our primary education sponsor, CIBC. One thing to note is that the Power Plant is just 5 minutes walk south of the convention center. So you have no excuses, you have time, it's really close, it's a perfect weather in Toronto. I hear it's really bad in Montreal. So you're good to be here. And I really welcome you to come and see our amazing exhibitions of Portuguese artist Pedro Cabrita Reis, titled 14 Paintings, The Preacher and a Broken Line. Also, Julia Dalt, Color Me Bad, and Toronto's very own Sheila Keeley, Notes on Obsolescence. Admission is always free at the Power Plant, thanks to BMO Financial Group. And now I will hand things over to my colleague Christine Bowen, our Curator of Education and Public Programs, who will introduce this evening eloquent speaker, Bisi Silva. Thank you.
I also want to thank you all for joining us tonight, and I appreciate that the ladies in the second row are keeping the party going while they're at the talk. That's nice to see. And it's my pleasure tonight to introduce you to Bisi Silva, and I reiterate Gaëtan's sentiments that we're so pleased to have her here with us tonight. Bisi Silva is an independent curator and the founder and director of the Center for Contemporary Art, Lagos, which opened in Nigeria in 2007. She has co-curated many international exhibitions, including The Progress of Love, a transcontinental collaboration across 3 venues in Nigeria and America in 2012, as well as J.D. Okai Ojekere, Moments of Beauty at Chiasma in Helsinki, and the Second Thessaloniki Biennial of Contemporary Art in Greece, entitled Praxis, Art in Times of Uncertainty in 2009. In 2006, Silva was one of the curators for the Dakar Biennial in Senegal and was a member of the international jury for the 55th Venice Biennale in 2013. So please join me in welcoming Bisi tonight.
So good evening to everyone. Thank you so much for taking time out to be here today. It's a pleasure to be here in Toronto for the first time in Canada. So I'd like to say a big thank you to Gaëtan Verna, Director of Power Plant, and Sylvia Fournier, Curator of African Art at ROM, as well as to Dominique Fontaine for inviting me on my first visit to Canada. and for the platform that has been made available to me to interact with a wider audience, to learn about what others are doing, and share with you some of the exciting activities in Lagos. My thanks also goes to Christine Bowen and Erin Kerr, who, despite my slow responses, remained calmly persistent in organizing my schedule and program. My talk will be kaleidoscopic, giving what I hope is a general overview of what is happening in Lagos, especially through the activities of the Center for Contemporary Art Lagos, but also within the West African region. In spite of the persistent notion of Africa as one big country, with 55 countries, it will be impossible to cover the whole continent with their specific histories and experiences. So what I'm going to do is give a little introduction, and then I'm going to be showing a lot of slides, giving you examples of our activities in Nigeria, but also in West Africa and beyond. After 2 decades of living and working in Europe, namely England and France, I relocated to Nigeria in 2002. At that time, the country was coming out of nearly 20 years of military dictatorship, which had left the society, its political, social, economic, and cultural fabric decimated. In 1999, we held the first democratic elections since the mid-80s, ushering in the government of Olusegun Obasanjo. As president, his primary concern was to begin the monumental task of restoring over 2 decades of neglect, which had resulted in severe infrastructural deficits. He considered the provision of basic amenities such as health and education a top priority. Prior to this period, throughout the 1980s until the mid-1990s, Nigeria had experienced a harsh military dictatorship. As with many dictatorships, their first assault is usually on the intellectual community, and the once vibrant and dynamic educational system, one of the leading ones in Africa in the 1960s and 1970s, descended into mediocrity as a result of continual attack through military interference in university administration, coupled with severe underfunding. This resulted in many of our top intellectuals leaving the country for Europe and America, affecting our educational institutions as well as the art and culture sector. Nonetheless, over the past 15 years, important and exciting advances have been made in all sectors of art and culture. Nonetheless, over the past 15 years, important and exciting advances have been made in all sectors of art and culture, with Nollywood developing at a phenomenal pace to its current position as the second largest film industry in terms of output after Bollywood and before Nollywood. Nigerian literature has always enjoyed international visibility through the works of the first African Nobel Prize winner for literature, Wole Soyinka, and writers such as Chinua Achebe. However, there is a new and dynamic generation of incredible writers, with one of the most visible being Chimamanda Adichie. Over the past 10 years, Nigerian fashion designers are redefining the parameters of African design, and local names such as Ituembasi, Lanre da Silva, Maki O are gaining visibility through the presentation of their works in New York, Paris, and Johannesburg. These developments are replicated in the field of music as well as in the performing arts, which both benefit from a strong tradition in the 1970s. Within this context, the visual arts sector is beginning to reorganize, restructure, and take its place within the cultural community. Nigeria's population is substantial, estimated at over 140 million people, and Lagos is in the list of the top 10 megacities as it approaches 18 million people. Although the Nigerian art scene is small, it is probably the second largest in Africa, outside of South Africa. There are over 25 institutions providing fine and applied art courses at university level. The scene is also vibrant, consisting mainly of private galleries doing brisk business with the hospitality, financial, telecommunications, as well as multinational oil companies operating in the country. The majority of works are traditional in terms of media, with painting and sculpture being the dominant mode of artistic expression, and the contextual conservatism regurgitates landscape painting, rural scenes, and a local staple of paintings of women as paragons of virtue, a situation that continues due to an art educational system based on a 1950s British Beaux-Arts Academy model that has changed little since inception. This is coupled with a lack of commitment and interest by any tier of government, whether federal, state, or local, in supporting the arts. Even attempts to place art and culture under the Ministry of Tourism has yielded little visible or consistent results. It is within this context that CCA Lagos was founded in 2007. It was founded because there are many artists who want to work or who do work with a variety of media and in more experimental ways. Artists who want to highlight the element of criticality within their work through its presentation as well as an engagement with diverse audiences. From the outset, CCA Lagos wanted to work with artists with a socially engaged practice as well as those working outside the constraints of accepted mediums, one that went beyond art as an object or a commodity. As a curator of contemporary art, it was also obvious that in the absence of the appropriate cultural infrastructure, I would have to start from scratch and create the platform that will allow me to articulate my ideas and realize projects with some of these artists. The curatorial imperative of CCA aims to encourage, support, and provide a platform for the artistic and critical engagement with the changing dynamics of cultural practices outside an educational system that demonstrates few, if any, relevance to the 21st century realities. CCA has focused considerably on lens-based media, which has had little or no consistent platform. Until very recently, photography, in spite of being introduced and practiced for nearly 150 years, continues to be relegated to the realm of a hobby. This is in spite of the fact that some of the continent's internationally and critically acclaimed photographers, such as Okayo Jekere, Andre Siebo, Uche Okpairoha, Abraham Ogbohasi, and Lucy Azubuike, come from Nigeria. Before 2007, we cannot even talk of video art or other lens-based or technologically driven media, such as sound art. Even performance art, which is gaining ground today across the continent, with one of the first performance biennale, Afri-Performer, was started in 2013 by Nigerian artist Jaleli Atiku. From a professional perspective, I wanted to discuss the idea of curatorial practice and the presentation of contemporary art from Africa within and outside of the continent. One that went beyond the exotic or neo-primitive or the preconceived ideas or categories of what people think contemporary African art is or should be. But mostly, I wanted to engage as well as articulate a perspective that comes out of a local context and gives meaning to the work that was being created. I wanted to challenge a limited focus of contemporary art from Africa, which reinforces the idea of a colonial gaze in the 21st century, limiting its depth, complexity, diversity, as well as its mobility within the global arena. Some of the questions I was asking included: what kind of curatorial practice is possible in a context in which infrastructural deficit, physical and intellectual, exists? What are the issues and themes preoccupying artists specifically and the society in general? In which way can CCA Lagos provide the platform and the space for artists' professional development? This uncharted territory presents its challenges, but also I saw it as a carte blanche for the development of new models, new strategies, and new possibilities, some of which we are exploring today. So in thinking about the setting up of CCA Lagos, an artist that came to mind and who inspired my direction is the late Nigerian musician Fela Anikulapo Kuti. Fela was a cultural and artistic innovator who developed a new genre in African music, Afrobeat. He was also a committed political activist who, with his biting satirical lyrics, taunted the government by highlighting the social ills of the day. And he was a human rights activist that stood up for and defended the rights of the common man. He's one of those few artists whose art, content, and aesthetic created a symbiotic harmony, making it as poignant and as relevant today as it was 30 years ago. CCA's inaugural exhibition appropriated the idea of Fela's song, Democracy, and organized the exhibition called Democracy, 3 solo exhibitions and a publication, to engage with the idea of democracy within an African context. We presented consecutively the work of 3 Nigerian artists. This is CCA building from the outside. We're on the 2nd and the 3rd floor. We have a gallery space and a library space. It's a small space, an alternative space, but I think, for me it was very important that, we had this research center where young artists can go, they have access to the latest books. We started the library with 500 books, and now it's at least 8,000 books, journals, videos, plus. We present between 2 to 5 exhibitions a year, depending on funding. I'm going to be showing a lot of images and talking, very briefly through them. I don't know if somebody can keep, when I have 10 minutes left, can you sort of let me know, please? Sometimes I'll stop and talk a little bit more about each artist. I've put together the 3 artists that we showed for the Democracy exhibition. The artists were let me see, I don't know where I point to. Let me see if I can. The first exhibition was with Gary Okulemi. Gary Okulemi worked with Fela Anikulapo for 19 years and designed over 23 of his album covers. The second artist that we showed was Ndidi Ndike, one of the leading female Nigerian artists who wanted to engage with the idea of slavery from an African perspective. And the third, let me see it. The third artist was photographer George Oshodi, who spent 9 years documenting the Niger Delta. The Niger Delta is the region that produces 90% of Nigerians' wealth, but fortunately that wealth has not been reinvested in the region, so there's been a lot of social disturbances. But more than that, there's also been gas flaring for the last 40 years. So you can imagine the pollution that exists in the region. It's a region that depends on the waterways for its livelihood. Due to oil pollution, the waters, the rivers have been polluted. So it's a part of a region of Nigeria that actually feeds the nation, but has been the most neglected. George Oshodi's work, which was also exhibited in Documenta a few years ago, actually talks about the situation in the Niger Delta. When we started CCA, and we do the same until today, we focus on thematics, different themes. So the first one was democracy. The second exhibition we did focused for the first time in Nigerian contemporary exhibition presentation on sexuality and the body. We presented the work of South African Zanele Muholi, who I'm sure some of you know here, is a South African lesbian activist whose work has been shown across the world quite prominently. She deals a lot with most of the issues that black South African lesbians, the experiences and the tribulations that they experience on a daily basis in their communities, in their country. This is the work of a Nigerian artist, Lucy Azubuike. We showed her menstruation series. I mean, this exhibition, you know, when I wrote the exhibition catalog, I said that it wasn't, in terms of contemporary art, it wasn't radical, but in terms of presenting contemporary art in Nigeria, it was extremely radical. First time that an exhibition that deals with gay issues was being presented in a country that outlaws homosexual relationships. I actually didn't know that. It was 2 weeks before the opening of the exhibition. I thought, oh, let me find out what the laws are concerning this. I don't even know what made me think about that, because I just got on with organizing the exhibition. So I went on the internet and found that it was illegal that homosexuality was illegal, and then also you could be arrested by association. So I panicked 2 weeks to the exhibition. But I panicked because the press releases had gone out, but I only panicked for 1 second. Why? Because I thought the politicians, they're not reading the culture pages. So that's okay. But then 3 minutes later, I thought, okay, the politicians may not be reading the culture section, but then we have the religious fundamentalists, the Christians and the Muslims. And that really worried me, that they could come to the gallery, I wouldn't know who was there. They could be anybody, and that could, create a problem. They could slash the work, and, I panicked, Zanelli's work, and I couldn't afford to, replace it if anything happened. And for the opening, we had the largest crowd for any opening that we had had until then, and half the faces there, I didn't know who they were. So that worried me as well, thinking, okay, who are these people? Is it the social security, plainclothes policemen? Is it some religious group? But luckily, nothing happened. We had a panel discussion that went extremely well, really vigorous discussions. However, 2-3 months later, a friend of mine that worked with the governor of Lagos State, he said to me, the governor was not happy with what you did. I'm like, what did I do? I've never even met the governor. He said, that exhibition you did. I'm like, which exhibition? Which exhibition? He goes, that exhibition. And I'm like, okay, that exhibition. You mean Like a Virgin? He said, yes. He said, do you know that you were under the SSS, State Security Surveillance, for 2 months? In case there was any problem, any public disturbances, we would have come in and shut you down. So these are the contexts. I mean, that sort of made me realize the context in which, I am working. And in Nigeria, it's human rights are a little bit dodgy, and if you're arrested, it can be quite tough getting out. So it's dangerous. It's very, very dangerous. Another thing that we focused on was on art, fashion, and identity. And, what we tend to do is, because our space is small, if we're focusing on a theme, we tend to, have different exhibitions throughout the year. This is an exhibition of a Turkish artist based in New York who did a 12-month residency in Brazil, in Bahia, on portraits of African Brazilian women. I thought that it was, one, it fitted within the theme, but I thought it was very important to engage with photography and portraiture of African, Brazilians, the diaspora. That's very important to the program that we do. The second exhibition in the Art, Fashion and Identity series was an exhibition of Okai Ojikere. This was the first presentation of his work beyond the hairstyles and the headgear series, which a lot of you may know and has been in circulation internationally since 2000 when he had his first solo exhibition at the Fondation Cartier in Paris. The third exhibition was a collaboration with IFA in Germany called Prêt à Partager, which involved the works of 15 artists from Africa, across Africa, but also from Europe, mainly from Germany. This gallery is the art school, which is about 10 minutes away from CCA. We like to collaborate with the University of Lagos as well as the Yaba College of Art, which are about 10 minutes from CCA. We like to interact with the students of both institutions. And this exhibition took place in 3 venues: at CCA, at the Gallery of the Art School, as well as another private gallery in the center of Lagos, African Arts Foundation. In 2012, our dear president woke up and decided to give us a really wonderful New Year present. On the 1st of January 2012, he decided to increase the price of petrol by 143%. As you can imagine, the effect on the people with regards to food, transportation, and the response of the Nigerians was to go out into the streets and also have their own Occupy movement. As a result of that, there was a lot of discussion going on within Nigeria, and CCA decided to invite the cultural community to discuss the situation at that time. We also invited artists to present work that they did during the Occupy protest. This is the work of sound and video artist Emeka Ogbo, who collected over 5,000 Twitter messages, which we presented in a sort of, not slide, but a continuous presentation on the screen. This is a selection of images by Abraham Ogbohasi. This was a very important moment in the history of Nigeria because we're not a nation that likes to go on strike. We would strike for a day and then everybody goes back to work. However, this time we were prepared to stay out, close the offices, close the schools for as long as it would take for the price of petrol to come down again. I think that after the first week, the government didn't back down, but by the second week, by Tuesday, Wednesday, they decided to bring the cost of the petrol down back to, not back to what it was, but they reduced it by at least 100%. And these are some of the images that the artist took documenting that moment. We also had a talk in which we invited cultural activists, a lawyer, artists to talk about their experiences and their feelings during this period. We invited the performance artist Jaleli Atiku to do a performance at CCA. He had already, the first performance took place during the protest in the street, and he brought the idea into the gallery space. So these are some of the impromptu activities that I guess are funding and are not being dependent on funding. Our independence, allows us to respond very quickly to events that are happening within our our community. We also have done a series of very interesting collaborations with institutions in Europe, in America. This particular one is the Progress of Love, which we did in collaboration with the Menil Collection in Houston and the Pulitzer Foundation for the Arts in St. Louis. It's a project that's quite close to my heart in the sense that when I was invited to collaborate with the curator, the initiator, Christina Van Dyke, I wasn't too keen on doing another Africa exhibition. And when she said that, it's not about identity, it's not about representation, it's about love, I thought, that's very interesting. How can we, engage with the idea of love from an African perspective? Instead of doing an exhibition that would have a specific time limit from the 1st of October to the 31st of December, I wanted to do a more performative exhibition that will unfold in series. It was a 4-month project that was in 4 different segments. The first one was a solo exhibition with Valerie Oka, an Ivorian artist, in which she presented a solo exhibition, video installation, a performative dinner, as well as her paintings and drawings that lasted for 5 weeks. The second segment was a performance artist, Wura Natasha Ogunji, a Nigerian American who was based in Nigeria for a year on a Guggenheim Fellowship, who did a performance that engaged with a father she never met. Her father left America a few months before she was born, and she never met him because he died about 15 years ago. He returned to, she never met him, he never returned to America. Over the years, she's tried to find out a little bit more about her father, why he didn't return to America, and she had different stories, but the one that seemed more plausible, or when she came to Nigeria for the first time in 2010, was that her grandfather, that's her mother's father, had threatened to shoot him if he came back to America. I mean, you can imagine that this was the American South in the 1960s, mid to late 60s. So this is a performance that she did that when she came to Nigeria, she went through his personal belongings and found that he kept a diary, and her performance is reenacting some of the information and some of the emotions that she felt, trying to engage and learn about her father through his diary, through her siblings that are in Nigeria. We also presented, the third presentation was a group show with about 5 artists, which included the work of Andre Siebo, which he was presenting for the first time in Nigeria. This was Living Queer Africa, was actually a work that he completed in 2007, but had never been able to find a space that would present the work. It deals with a young Cameroonian who left his country because of his sexuality, moved to Paris, but found that being a black African gay man in Paris wasn't any easier. This is the work of a young Nigerian filmmaker, a trilogy that explores relationship between 2 black British male characters. There was a third one, which I don't have the image of, but it was a film by Zanele Muholi called Difficult Love. And I think, this is an exhibition that comes 2 or 3 years after Like a Virgin. And before I decided to show, knowing the situation in Nigeria with regards to homosexuality, I had to really think for a long time, do I want to show the works of Adaora, of Zanele Muholi, of Andre Siebo? But in the end, I thought, well, I do have to show them because I didn't want to go through a situation of self-censorship, but also censoring the work of artists. But what I did do is think about, how do I talk about these artists' work in a way that doesn't attract attention from the authorities. I think the fact that it's within a group exhibition that's talking about love generally, I was able to present it. And I think what's really interesting is the reaction of the audience. We had talks, artist talks, we had panel discussions, and I thought that there'll be some, because the first time when we showed Like a Virgin, when I read the visitor's book, we had comments that said, about the work, this is disgusting, this is pornographic, why do you need to show this kind of work? And then we had other comments that said it's about time that this kind of exhibition is being shown in Nigeria. So, we had both perspectives, whereas this time with 2-3 years later, with the progress of love, we had none of those comments. It was interesting artist, interesting exhibition, interesting theme, and the fact that, we were also integrating work by artists that dealt with gay issues didn't seem to be a problem anymore. In fact, there was a writer that we invited who had written in the book, for Like a Virgin, this is ungodly or unholy or something. He came for the panel discussion for the progress of love. Somebody asked him, if he would ever write, if one of his characters would ever be a gay person. And I was really shocked to hear him say that if the book called for that, he would definitely have a character that that was homosexual. Now, I think he's forgotten what he wrote 2 or 3 years ago. So that's really interesting, the kind of acceptability, at least within the cultural sector, that is allowing us to show this kind of work. This is the work of a young artist called Temitayo Ogunbiyi. I quite like this work. It's called, I can't see the, Love Text Messages. There's an Android phone where you can type in, on Valentine's Day, you could type in a message to somebody. But what I like the most are the books. You can't see it very well. Are the books, the booklets that she has here. She was inspired by these booklets that came out. They're called the Onitsha pamphlets. And in the 40s and 50s, in the eastern part of Nigeria, there were these little notelets that had not instructions, but advice on how to cope with city living, how to chat up a girl, how to go for your first interview. So she took that model and created these love text message books, which also exist for people who can't write well or don't have a lot of educational background. There are these texts, there are these books that come out every month, these little notelets that come out every month with a lot of text messages, and you can send to your loved one, or if there's a girl that or guy that you're interested in, you can send them a text message that's already been composed for you. So she took that model and created her own love text message book. Okay, this is the film by Zanele Muholi, Difficult Love, that followed the lives of 4 black South African lesbians, 2 that lived under a bridge. They'd been made homeless because they've been marginalized by their society. One that was trying to adopt a single mother, a single lady that wanted to adopt a child. Another was a young girl that had been a victim of the corrective rape that we read about in South Africa. And the 4th was about Zanele Muholi and her partner. The last part of the progress of love was a two-part performance by Jaleli Atiku in the same vein as the work by Wura Natasha Ogunji. Zanelli was born a few months after, no, his mother was 2 months pregnant with him when his father died, so he'd never met his father. This performance is like a tribute, a final tribute, a final memory, put into rest, if you wish, his feelings of missing a father that he never knew. And this is the second part of the performance in which there was a mock burial of his father. We also support a lot of young artists through solo shows as a way of presenting their works to a wider audience and having discussions around the work. This is the work of a young Nigerian photographer called Adolphus Okwara. The exhibition was Emissaries of an Iconic Religion in 2012 that were portraits of traditional custodians of Yoruba religion. Due to the rise of fundamentalist Christianity and Islam, traditional religion has been relegated to the level of, fetish, of evil, of devil worshipping, and he wanted to bring, the portraits of these individuals. Is a 2-year project that he developed. He wanted to bring the portraits of these individuals and the work that they do into a context where a discussion can be had around the different religions and about tolerance as well, that you cannot deny your own religion in favor of a foreign religion. They all have to be placed on the same level. There has to be tolerance, which there's very little of that in Nigeria at the moment. This exhibition, No One Belongs Here More Than You, is also an important exhibition because we try to reach out to the Nigerian diaspora and the African diaspora. These 3 artists, Inena Okore, Ruby Emanze, and Wura Natasha Ogunji, were actually in Nigeria at the same time. Nena and Ruby were on a Fulbright fellowship, and Nena and Ruby and Wura Natasha was on a Guggenheim Fellowship. At the end of their 1-year stay in Nigeria, I invited them to do an exhibition that articulates their experience, engaging with the cultural sector in Nigeria, their experiences of being somebody that lives outside of Nigeria and working in Nigeria for an extended period. This was the exhibition that they presented of the work that they had been working on during that 10 to 12-month period. And that's the American consul who funded the exhibition. This year we had an exhibition of Anatsui that I'm sure most of you know. He's very famous for his huge, monumental, scintillating sculptural hangings. He was 70 this year, and he's also on our board of trustees. And I wanted to do an exhibition with him. And I thought, how do I, excuse me, how do I organize an exhibition of a celebrated artist like Anatsui? We don't have the space or the height for his wall hangings, and we definitely don't have the money to insure the work. We don't have the money to insure one single work by him. And I thought, okay, what I'll do is go to Nsukka, rummage through his studio, rummage through his study, and see what we can bring up from that. But I think this is actually one of the most important exhibitions that has been held at CCA. Why is that? Because for the last 10, 15 years, Anatsui has been celebrated worldwide for the metal sculptures that he does. However, For the last 30 years, he has been working in Nigeria, creating different bodies of work, and his work that most people know has been decontextualized from the work that he did at the beginning. So in a way, this is a retrospective, and I also call it the cheapest exhibition of the most expensive artist in Africa. We didn't have a budget for it, no funding, nothing. I don't think it cost more than $2,000, and that's including the opening. So what we do have is the history of the artist. It started, you can't see it here, but we borrowed from a collector the initial wooden trays that he made when he left university in the sort of mid-70s, 1974, 1975. These are placed very close to the wood sculptures. Okay, I don't like this thing. The wood sculptures that he worked with for over 20, 25, and continues to work with till this day, excuse me, and for which he's known in Nigeria, in Nsukka. I think that that's really important because, especially for the young artist, because they can see the trajectory over a 40-year period of this artist. He didn't just arrive on the international art scene, and you can see the connections between the work he did when he just left university. Excuse me. Recovering from flu. You can see the connections between the work he did as a young artist, the work that followed, and how he arrived at the metal sculptures that we see today. We included his drawings, one or two paintings. We included personal stuff like his correspondences. We have a wall of letters. Sorry? Oh, I can point. No. We have a wall of letters by curators to him and that he wrote to curators. We have inside here crates, we have press releases, we have reviews of newspapers, but we also included, Elle was a teacher for nearly 30 years, 1975 until 2011. For nearly 30 years, he was a teacher at the University of Nigeria, Nsukka. So we included the work of 3 of his students. Anatsui has a habit of mentoring female artists because they tend to be disadvantaged, I would say, within the art scene. And we included the work of Nnenna Okore, Lucy Azubuike, and Amarachi Okafor. You can't see it from this angle. We also included I don't think you can see it. We also included his pay slips. He keeps everything. His very first pay slip when he was earning what would be in today's value 90 cents. Until the final pay slip that he received when he retired a few years ago. We had videos of his work, the Susan Vogel video, and lots of other ephemeral, just to give people an idea of his trajectory over the last 30 years. Very important exhibition. And what's exciting is I'm thinking of touring this exhibition across West Africa. We have interest from Ghana. We hope to take it to his university in Kumasi. We have interest from Douala, Cameroon. It will probably go to Ivory Coast. We're thinking of taking it to Zimbabwe and maybe other countries across Africa. How many minutes? 5 minutes left. So I'm going to whisk through the rest. I'm almost coming to the end. Another program that's really important is we do an art academy. We've been doing that since 2010, and it brings together young artists because of the educational, the gaps in the educational system. It brings together young artists from across Africa. We've done 4 editions. 2 years ago, we started moving it from Lagos to other African countries. So the first 2 were in Lagos. Last year, we were in Ghana. And this year, we went to Dakar during the Dakar Biennale. This is a picture. We have artists, curators, art historians, writers, who come over a 5-week period to give talks, workshops, masterclasses. We took advantage of the Dakar Biennale, and we had people like Wangechi Mutu, who came and gave an incredible talk. It's also an opportunity for the young artists, many of whom don't have the opportunity to travel, to meet a lot of the artists who are in the diaspora. We also interact with our colleagues across West Africa. In 2013, I invited 4 galleries to Market Art Dubai, a gallery from Accra, Nbuki Foundation, Douala Art from Douala, Raw Material from Dakar, and Cap Diem from Segu, as well as CCA Lagos. And these are the artists that we presented: sound artists, photographers, illustrator and painter, mixed media artist. We also do lecture series. That's really important for the local context in having different speakers from across the world. We've had Shaidun Alam from Bangladesh, Gabriela Salgado, Argentina, Yinka Shonibare. We brought Yinka Shonibare back to Nigeria after a 30, I think he left in 1976. So after a 28-year gap, he came back for the first time. We had over 250 people who attended his talk. And this is the most recent project that we're working on at the moment, which is of Nigerian photographer J.D. Okayo-Jikere, who we've been working with and researching since 2009. The first exhibition was actually part of a group exhibition in Mumbai. I was invited to present some African artists in Mumbai. This is the exhibition that we did at CCA in 2010 to mark the photographer's 80th birthday, as well as 50 years of Nigeria's independence. This is the first comprehensive exhibition of Okayo-Jikere that was held in 2011 at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Helsinki. We presented 175 images from his very, very diverse archive. Those who know his work know that it's mainly the hairstyle and the headgear that tends to be presented. Here we presented his architecture, his arts and culture, his education, his trades, his traditional wedding, Western weddings, his independence images. And the final and forthcoming is the comprehensive monograph on J.D. Okayo-Jikere, which will feature over 220 images by the artist and 6 newly commissioned essays, as well as the last in-depth interview with the artist who passed away at the beginning of this year. Thank you very much. Questions? Any questions? 1 or 2 questions? Kinsey.
I have a question. You're talking about the... Hi.
Hi.
I had a question about the exhibition you were talking about, like a Virgin and some of the other work by people in the queer community in Lagos. And you were talking about the SSS saying that you were
under surveillance.
Under surveillance.
Yes, surveillance.
And so my mind kind of stopped for a moment because I thought, under surveillance, but they didn't do anything.
No.
But they would have. And then I thought, oh, there's this protective sentiment from the government. And I thought, oh, shut down like permanently? Or
I
just
don't
the
know.
exhibition?
I don't know. I
Okay.
didn't ask.
It seemed like an interesting juxtaposition between
ask.
of the government non-involvement, but not in non-presence, but still awareness.
Well, I mean, one of the things that somebody said was that the governor, he didn't want any riots in his state. We've had a situation where I think it was Miss World that was supposed to take place in Nigeria, in Abuja. And, there was, when it started, there was, a big uproar by the Muslim community and a lot of threats, and it had to be cancelled and moved immediately. So, maybe he was thinking of something like that. And, I understand that because it can get extremely ugly. I mean, Nigeria is a place where something like that can get ugly and it can get out of hand.
And that's not just Nigeria either. A similar, the worst situation happened in Senegal in May, where it did become violent, though on a small scale,
Yes.
and we had to be evacuated as residents there.
Yes.
And so it was interesting to hear about the dynamic but different outcome
Yeah,
in
exactly.
where you were. So.
Yeah. And I think it's also how, like I said, I learned how to communicate, my exhibitions, so it allows me to show the work because of the way in which I communicate. I don't, put it out there that this is what I'm doing, but, you find the words that, if you read a little bit deeper, then you may see it. But, for politicians, it's just reading, on love. I don't think that they're going to budge like a Virgin, Madonna. Probably thinks it's some cool, exhibition about music.
I wanted to ask something. The first time in 2006, I was in Tokyo, and I saw Africa Remix.
Okay, yes.
That was for the first time for me.
Yes.
My ignorance. I do come from Albania, which is not a big country. Neither do we have so many exhibitions. So I was quite lucky to be there for an exhibition. And David Elliott and a bunch of other curators created this very important show. That was my first approach with African contemporary artists that went from music to film, to video, to everything. So Simon Jami, I have seen afterwards the Biennale that we, for the first time, was Africa as a continent included in the Biennale. So that is another question, but I don't want to open it here. But my real question as an artist, coming from not rich country, which means is not beauty to be hanged, but you deal with issues like whatever goes in the everyday life, and to think about how you can express that, which is not anymore beauty, but as well being used. Make you think, which is the most important thing in that case. So how difficult is for an African artist, which is young, and to become like Anatsui, which most of the people know what you said, what's that kind of work, to get out and develop a work that can be honest for his background and where he wants to go in his dreams. Because it's very difficult for the conditions he comes from.
No, it's extremely difficult. I'm going to talk about Nigeria. I'm very specific to Nigeria because the context in Cameroon is completely different from Nigeria. In Cameroon, there is absolutely no market, little or no infrastructure, one main, space, Douala Art, that's doing almost everything. Nigeria is a huge country. There's a lot of wealth there, a lot of multinationals, oil companies, Shell, Chevron, Total, they're all there. And the banks, they're all buying. So what tends to happen is, I would say for the more savvy artist, they have two practices. The first one is one that feeds them. And the thing is that in Nigeria, most artists, I remember when I returned, I was like, you don't have a job? What, you live off your work? they live off their work in one way or the other. So they have a practice that allows them to live. For those who are more ambitious, the money they get from that, they put it into other works, maybe the ideas that they really want to deal with, more conceptual, more controversial maybe, work that they want to deal with. So you find that a lot of artists do have this, schizophrenic artistic practice, which works for some of them. I mean, I work with, quite a few artists that work in that way. They have, I went to an artist studio and he has, a whole section of portraits and children playing, and, the collector comes, I want this, I want that. They pay him, and then we go into another room where he has, the works which he's developing over a longer period of time, that's more experimental, that could be dealing with, issues, more personal issues of, autobiography, of the family, of history, of memory, whereas the other one is just, daily feeding. So, I would say that, and there are people here who have been to Nigeria, our artists, they're quite resourceful. They're quite business-minded. So I'd like to be an artist in Nigeria. But you go to Cameroon, you go to Togo, you go to other countries, and really it's a very, very difficult situation. Africa, exactly. I can't talk about, it's a completely different situation. I've been to Mozambique, so many African countries where, it's not the same. You have artists who don't even have money to make the work they want to make. So it's really difficult for them. There's no market. The institutions are, not active. So it is difficult. So afterwards here.
Okay, I just wanted to thank you for coming and shedding more light on art in Africa. What do you really think is the biggest challenge for us young people?
Well, I think, once again, I'll talk about Nigeria, and as much as we complain, I think we're also in a very unique position. We believe in the do-it-yourself culture because the government is just not there. I mean, if I wanted to keep working in the field that I'm working in, I had to set up my own space. If it's literature, some people have set up publishing houses. If you were at the talk yesterday by Binyavanga, he comes, Chinamande, she does this literature. I mean, literature is quite big in Nigeria at the moment, and there are all these, it's almost chic. There are all these workshops for young writers, there are master classes. Now, the banks have gotten on the act and they're sponsoring, master classes. It's, quite lavish almost. We have the another company that funds the literature prize. I think is it 20,000 or 100,000 US dollars? I can't even remember. A lot of money. And you have smaller groups of young writers or wannabe writers who meet up and discuss their works. They set up blogs, they set up websites. Really, it's a do-it-yourself culture. You have to create your own spaces. I know young cultural facilitators who, just try and get a space and, put it on Facebook and this is what we're doing, come along. A lot of them come to CCA. Can we have the space for the afternoon, for the day, for 2 days? And, I'm happy to do that. The rent is paid anyway, so you might as well use it. But there is a lot. It is 120% do-it-yourself culture.
Okay, thank you so much again for kind of giving this overview of the entire scene. I really wanted you to talk a little bit about the book, because a lot of us online were following it and are very glad that it's actually going to happen. And I was very excited to see that technology was used to tap into the demand.
Yes.
And the way you were able to leapfrog whether or not a publisher thinks this book should be done. Here are a few thousand people who will buy the book before it's even published. So that was very exciting, and also gave me some insight as to sometimes the gap between institutionally what they think is in demand, and also the awareness of the public, where it's almost like technology is allowing you to leapfrog that. As far as gatekeepers and tastemakers, people know about contemporary African art. They are very interested and show it in many ways. So could you please talk a little bit about maybe the technology aspect of it, or just that being able to leapfrog sometimes these institutional constraints?
The Ojekere publication is, I always get really passionate and emotional when I talk about it, because it's been a long journey, 5 years, trying to get this book published. We started, and I tried to get some of the major publishers, Stidel, Skira, Hans, the whole lot of them, and that wasn't happening. So I put it away for a year or two, and then a friend of mine said, Bisi, what's up with you? Just publish it yourself. And I was like, really? And he's like, yeah, come on. There's a market in Nigeria. You can do this, and, and just get it done. We just need to keep moving forward. And I'm like, okay, you're done right. I can do this. And, so took out the files again and started working on it. And, I really wanted to use Kickstarter as a way to show others who may have that dream, that project, which is sitting in their drawer, and they're thinking, how can I make this happen? And, I'm lucky, I sort of have visibility. I could probably get funding. I could probably get funding. Sorry. I could probably get funding if I tried. But I wanted to do it alone. After a while, I'm like, no, I don't want, any partners. I don't want any funding. I want to be able to do it, publish it, CCA to publish it, so that other people can see that they can do it as well. And they need to, it doesn't matter how long it's going to take. You just have to make that effort. And that's what I'm talking about, this do-it-yourself culture. I'm very, very active on Facebook. Okay? I'm going to go off it if you guys don't behave. I'm very, very active on Facebook. I don't Twitter, but I have my colleagues who Twitter. Email and all these other technology-driven networks. So, going on to Kickstarter was just a natural, progression. And it wasn't so much about the raising of the funds, but it was about reaching out to a global audience. How do I bypass, mainstream publishing, networks, distribution? I'm not a big organization. In fact, we're only 4 people. And I thought that, Kickstarter could help. We had people from, Vietnam putting in money, from, countries. I'm like, whoa, how come they're so interested? Have they even heard of Ojekere before? So that was really, really fantastic. And the community that one builds, through Kickstarter, I think, I had more friends clicking, I had friends clicking every 5 minutes, and I'm like, what's up with you people? It's not even your project. But, just people, really doing this in a community, a collective way, buying into the project, buying into the vision. It was such an incredible experience. And it's more it's so significant because, you know, Ojekere was 83 when he died, but he'd worked with me. You know, I used to go and see him weekly. We'll sit and talk all day. He'll talk, you know, open up the archive. You know, maybe he forgot something last week. He'll remember it this week. So it was a collaboration with the artist. It wasn't, you know, CCA publisher. It's an artist project. And the fact that, you know, it lasted so long, I couldn't get a publisher. He died before it was published is extremely painful, you know, to me, because if I had found a publisher earlier on, he would have seen it. One of the last things that he said to me was in December when I spoke to him, or was it in January, was, Bisi, when is this book going to be ready? And I'm like, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. And 2-3 weeks later, he was no longer around to see it. So really, it's a tribute to over 60 years of photographic practice. If I hadn't continued, if I hadn't been going to see him weekly, then, you know, this information will not be, you know, available today. And yet, another African would have died without, you know, the documentation, the critical reflection, you know, around his work. Thank you.
I want to say thank you to Bisi Silva for sharing how your inspiring work with CCA Lagos is changing the state of art and culture and raising social consciousness in Nigeria and setting an example for the rest of us. So thank you for your inspiring talk. I'd also like to thank everyone here for joining us tonight and also invite you to come again tomorrow at 3 p.m. when Saskia Boss, Dean of the School of Art at the Cooper Union, will discuss the need for supporting the careers of emerging artists in her talk entitled, Not Quite Meant for Above the Couch. Hope to see you then. Thank you.